وطن يستطيع أن يطمئن ويأمن بعد خوف أنه قد أصبح له درع وسيف.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special show today celebrating the 46th anniversary of the October 6, 1973 war victory. Now, at 2:05 p.m., about 220 Egyptian fighter jets crossed the canal, the Suez Canal, targeting at low height, was targeting Israeli targets in Sinai. Low-high bombardment, and this very strike achieved its main goal and destroyed all these targets.
And at the very same time, more than 2,000 artillery of different types along the front bombarded the Israeli points on the eastern front of the Suez Canal in Sinai.
Now, simultaneously, the second armed forces, the 2nd Army Battalion, also the 3rd Army, crossed the Suez Canal physically using rubber and wooden boats to get from one side to the other.
At the very same time, the engineering corps succeeded in building the first heavy bridge, making several passages in the dust shield along the front, and they built heavy and light bridges and multiple ferry boats.
Yes, and to commemorate such a very important war victory and the first airstrike by the Egyptian side targeting the Israeli targets in Sinai, we chose this place, the Air Force Museum, located in Heliopolis in Great Cairo. Have a lot of main features. We have a lot of reports, special edition interviews with our very distinguished guests. So don't go away. We have a treat for you.
بحبك يا بلادي يا مصر، بحبك يا مصر، بحبك يا مصر، بحبك يا مصر، بحبك وقلبي يرفرف في قلبي في لحظة ما أقولك بحبك يا مصر، بحبك وقلبي يرفرف في قلبي لحظة ما أقولك بحبك يا مصر، بحبك 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 يا مصر، يا مصري بحبك بحبك يا بلادي، يا بلادي يا بلادي بحبك يا بلادي، يا مصري بحبك بحبك يا مصر، بحبك يا مصر، بحبك يا مصر، بحبك وحبك يخضر ربيعي يفرح دموعي بحبك يا مصر، بحبك وحبك يخضر ربيعي يفرح دموعي بحبك حبك يا مصر
الشعب المصري بقى واعي قوي، ما تقلقوش من حاجه.
يا مصر يا مصري بحبك بحبك يا بلادي
يا بلادي بحبك يا بلادي يا مصر بحبك يا مصر
بحبك يا مصر بحبك يا مصر ولو خيروني أقول يحرموني ولو نور عيوني وأحبك يا مصر ولو خيروني أقول يحرموني ولو نور عيوني وأحبك يا مصر بحبك 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 يا مصر يا مصري بحبك بحبك يا بلادي
يا بلادي يا بلادي بحبك يا بلادي يا مصر بحبك يا مصر
بحبك يا مصر ولو عشت قلبي بكل اللي عندي ما وفي بوعدي في حبك يا مصر ولو عشت قلبي بكل اللي عندي ما وفي بوعدي في حبك يا مصر
Indeed, the October War serves as a textbook case study in the use of military means for political ends and provides other lessons for modern warfare that remain fundamental today as they were 46 years ago.
And it was not just a war about liberating the land. That happened. But it was also a victory over despair, over frustration, and mainly going for peace.
And throughout the upcoming feature, we will show you how Egypt's Air Force were assigned to launch a concentrated surprise aerial strike with a force of more than 200 aircrafts.
And that first airstrike, it targeted and destroyed the first main target, which was an Israeli command center behind enemy lines. Let's watch this feature and we'll be right back.
When the General Command of the Egyptian Armed Forces began planning for the 6th of October War in 1973, the Air Forces were assigned to launch a concentrated surprise aerial strike with a force of more than 200 aircrafts. The Egyptian aircrafts managed to hit and destroy the first target, which was the main command center of the Israeli forces using long-range missiles. The Egyptian aircraft crossed the line all at one time, evading Israeli radars by flying below detection height at low altitudes, about 2 meters high. With highly accurate navigation calculations, routes and directions were specified, and with precise predetermined speeds, all airplanes took off from different air bases simultaneously, achieving a complete surprise strike to the Israeli enemy. On October 14, 1973, the Egyptian Air Forces have gone on even greater battle, which is Mansoura Air Battle, where 250 aircraft participated. The air battle began at 15:15 and lasted for 53 minutes. During this short time, the Egyptian Air Force destroyed 18 Israeli fighters, achieving by thus the greatest victory in its history.
At 2:05 p.m. on the 6th of October, 220 Egyptian aircrafts crossed the Suez Canal at low height to bombard the Israeli targets in Sinai, the very strike that achieved its target. At the very same time, more than 2,000 artillery of different types along the front bombarded Israeli points on the eastern front of the Suez Canal in Sinai. Simultaneously, the Egyptian Second Army Forces and the Third Army Forces crossed the canal successfully by different kinds of rubber boats and wooden boats. The Egyptian Engineering Corps succeeded to build the first heavy bridge, make several passages in the dust shield along the front, and also build heavy and light bridges and multiple ferry boats. Israeli air forces failed to destroy the Egyptian air defense network, which used all kinds of SAM missiles efficiently and attacked many Israeli aircraft. As a result of that collaborative efforts, Barlev Line fell and Egypt's army crossed the canal and ensured a very important landslide victory. Because the Egyptian Armed Forces victory in 1973 war, the Egyptian Air Force has become a model example to be followed by in the arts of war. And today's celebration is held at the Air Force Museum, which is one of Egypt's mind-blowing museums located in Al-Maza military base. A tour through outside and inside of the museum takes the visitors back to 1973 October War by displaying helicopters and aircrafts of the era, as you can see behind me. We're also honored to have with us one of the veterans who witnessed and took part in the October War to elicit the stories and tell us the stories that we don't know. We're all eager to hear the veteran what the veteran will tell us. We'd like to welcome our guest for today, Major General Magdiddin Rifat, Air Force veteran. Major General Magdiddin Rifat is one of October War veterans, and he will help us shed light on Egypt's force contribution in October victory, the victory that the Egyptian state is securing until this very today. We're very much honored to have you with us, General Magdi. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zahra.
Now, we'd like to start by the early beginning, how you joined the Army Force and how you joined the Air Forces in the beginning.
First of all, I would like to welcome all the audience and outside Egypt and inside Egypt. And I have to remember our colleagues were killed in action on different wars. Rest in peace, all of them, and mercy of God on them. God bless them all. I joined the Egyptian Air Force in Academy in 1st of October 1964. I was because I was fond of how to fly the machine. I wanted to fly a machine. It was my dream. Then I graduated in 1st of June 1967, just a few days before the war, 1967 war. And then all of a sudden we joined the combat formation and we start our training under the pressure of the enemy,
Yes.
which is much different between being trained in peacetime or during the war.
Wasn't that difficult for you, Mr. General? Because you told me you were just graduating, fresh graduates, and joining a war, a very important war, actually. So
It was a hard time. It was a very hard time for us and for our leaders. And we have so many losses, but in fact we have also in attrition war some of big victories against the enemy. And it's our land. We have the right to do this. We have a keen desire to regain our dignity, regain our honor during these days.
Of course.
It's a hard time, but we spent 2 years in an attrition war, which is the beginning or the preparation for October War.
Of course. General Magdidin, today marks the 46th anniversary of the 1973 October War. The dramatic events profoundly alerted the course of the Middle East politics. Now, we all are eager to know the crucial role of the air forces in October War.
Being among the Egyptian Air Force fighters, we spent the attrition war 2 years and some months in attrition war, real fight, and then we have the ceasefire. Then we start to prepare ourselves, and nobody knows where the war will begin, which it was began from our side to attack and regain our dignity once more. In these 6 years, we were in a very hard pressure on ourselves and our morale, and then as long as we have the orders to launch our strike against, then we just take off and went into the war. To start the war as an Air Force, I consider it the first echelon of the armed force, because we start. We
attack, as you just
we
told
attack.
us, yes.
We are the first echelon of the aerial war. Then
So you prepare for the other forces to...
we prepare for the other forces, or to give them. We are cooperate with the other forces. We don't fight alone. We
Yes,
cooperate
of
with
course.
them, and then we did with the artillery, just put the enemy under pressure to give the chance to our land forces to cross the Suez Canal and do the big victory, which they did. And then we continue. It's not only the first strike. We kept flying and do strikes in different areas among the whole war.
But was it hard for you? I mean, 6 years, as you told me, between 1967 and 1973. Were you prepared to go through a war? How did you feel back then? Your morale? You're just coming out of war that Egypt lost. So how did you feel about
Let
it?
me tell you something, Hala. When you have the right to regain and take back your land and take back your dignity and take back, give the chance to our forces to do this, you are eager to do. You are very pleased to do this. You have a very high morale. We have a very high morale, and morale, one of the concepts we consider it in the fighters to do, to attack the others. Maybe you have two machines or two fighters against each other. One with low morale, one with the high morale. Maybe the one with high morale have a less capacity or a slower machine, but with high morale, he can do a lot.
And that's what happened in 1973.
That's what happened when we consider the MiG-21. If we consider it one, the Phantom is three, and the
And the Israelis had the Phantoms.
the Phantom, the Israeli Phantom, and the Mirages is two. Then to attack them and to have a victory on them, it's a big victory.
Of course. Where did you serve the majority of time in services? Do you recall the first days in service when you first joined the location?
I joined the fighter formation since the early beginning, and I spent till the rank of Brigadier General. I spent till I quit. I start to have a commanding post by that time. Then I spent most of my time in the battle formation, in the MiG-21 and the Mirage 5.
Yes. Sir, those of us who had the fathers and grandfathers who were in the army, our fathers and grandfathers always used to tell us stories about the army, about their memories in the war in 1967, 1973, the role of the Egyptian army in regaining dignity, not only for Egypt, but for the whole region. We always had stories, so I believe that you can share with us some of those stories.
And my personal
Yes,
capacity.
and I'm sure that you told your children and grandchildren about them.
My personal capacity that in 1967, during a aerial battle between us and the other Mirages, the enemy Mirages, I was flying as the formator for one of our leaders. Then we went in a combat against the Mirages. Then I had a shutdown. They succeeded to attack me. Then I had a fire in my machine, my MiG-21. Then my leader said, eject or leave the aircraft. But because we don't have this much aircraft, I decided to land this machine, whatever is the price of this. Then in a very hard condition with fire on my engines, I start to land this machine, which is now in the panorama.
Wow.
The name is the number is 8040. Then I landed in hard times, and I was decorated by a bravery medal, and President Nasser sent me some rewards, which is by that time very high, which is 10 pounds.
That was too much, but the value is
the value is the bravery.
Emotional,
the
of
bravery.
course. It's,
I am very. Then I had the Wounded in War medal, Wounded in Action. I had it twice. Once in
you were wounded twice.
Wounded twice. Once in this time in 1969, and then in 73 war.
In 1973.
On the other hand, we went in a battle with my colleagues, Samir Aziz, Mikhail, Rida Iskandar, Wasf Sharaklini, myself, Magdiddin Rifat. We went against the Phantoms. And we succeeded, Wasfi mainly and me, we succeeded to shoot down one Phantom. Then we were rewarded, and it was a big victory against, while we have the MiG-21, which is less capacity of the Phantoms. And then we were rewarded once more, and again I was rewarded with the duty medal. In the 1973 war, I left the MiG-21. I went to the ground attack of the Mirage 5, and then we start to attack in what we call it the pocket or the Sagra. We attack the Egyptian, the Israeli troops over there, and I had a hit in my machine. Then I had to leave the aircraft, ejected, and landed in our home village. Then I was rewarded once more in that time. It was a hard time, but it has so many funny
stories. That's
stories,
what I'm talking about.
Well, where you just remember, and I'm very proud of what I did. I'm very proud.
And we are proud too,
Thank you.
Mr. Jenner. We are proud too. Now, we will continue our interview after watching the upcoming report showing the different types of aircraft available here at the Air Force Museum. Air Force Museum is the largest military aviation museum in Egypt, with several types of aircraft on display, as you can see. And some of these aircrafts dated back to October 1973. Let's watch.
Today we are going to be talking about the aircrafts located in the museum. We have the inner section of the museum and the outer section of the museum. Egyptian Air Force Museum was built in 4 stages. The 4 stages lasted from 1996 to 2016, where it was opened. This is the Tiger Moth, the oldest plane in the Air Force. The plane, the yellow plane we can see right in front of us, is the Gomhuraya. The first training aircraft Egyptian made. It entered the Egyptian Air Force 1953 and it was serviced out by 2006. We are currently in the Mi-6. This is a transport aircraft, the biggest transport aircraft we have in the Egyptian Air Force Museum. This can carry up to 120 passengers or 2 armored vehicles. It was serviced out 1988, and to this day it's one of the biggest aircrafts we have in the Air Force. This is the F-16. This is a multi-mission fighter. The country of origin is from the United States of America. It's the most advanced plane in the Egyptian Air Force Museum, but it's not the most advanced plane in the Egyptian Air Force.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, sir, I'd like you to brief us on the way the Air Force used to deal with the enemy's aircrafts aiming to neutralize the Egyptian Air Force base and its missiles defense shielded during the October War. How did you defend the
In
air
fact,
base?
to have a combined forces battle, which we call it combined forces battle, which is the Army, Navy, and Air Defense and Air Force. Then we have a big air defense net all over Egypt and defending our main targets, air bases, air armies, the 2 armies, and we cooperate with the air defense by so many means of cooperation to defend our land.
Yes.
And those enemy aircraft, they have to come all over the Sinai. They have to come from Israel to attack us. Then they are out of their homeland. They come to attack us. We will well prepared to receive them, to intercept them.
How well prepared? What preparation did you take?
Just we have this net of radars which give us idea what's going on. They are coming.
Yes.
We have what we call it air patrolling or air umbrella from our fighters along the borders in very designated areas where we anticipate where the enemy will come, and to have too many tricks to know where they did come, and then to attack them. And the real battle was in October 14, when they attack us with more than 150, 160 aircraft in so many waves, 3 waves, and we waited for them, and we have air victories. We shot down 18 aircraft out of them. 18. And we lost 6 aircraft. 2 of them is short of fuel, not by attack.
Okay.
Those our fighters who were intercepted these machines, because we have a very short endurance in our MiG-21, then they have to land and refuel and go again in the same battle, which lasted for 53 minutes, which is abnormal all over the aerial battle.
Less than an hour.
Less than an hour.
Yes.
And more than any other battle. Normally, the aerial battle don't last more than 5 minutes, 3 minutes. That's all. But to continue attacking us and defending ourselves and attack them once more for 53 minutes, it was a big victory.
Of course.
It's a big victory. Then they failed to achieve their goals, and they returned back
Although
home.
they had more or
They have the Mirage, the Phantom, the Skyhawks.
better aircrafts, if we may say.
That's why this is the day of the Air Force. We consider it Air Force Day.
Of course, proudly we do.
Proudly, we have a.
Yes, General
few-
Magdiddin, 46 years ago, the October War. Why do you think that we won the war? What made October War so significant and changed the history of Egypt?
In the modern battles, in fact, the war is always there, but I call it battles. Battle of 56, Battle of 60. It's a continuous fighting between us and the others. But in 1973 war, it was the first real victory against them, big victory. We have so many minor victories in 67, so many sacrifices, so many killed in action of our pioneers and pioneers fighters. But in 1973 war or battle, it was the real victory against the Israelis, a real victory, which led to the peace treaty.
Yes.
Because I remember I had a lecture or a debate back in the 80s after the peace treaty, and they asked us, "Did you win?" The foreigners. They asked me, "Did you win?" I said, "What is the goal of the war? What's the goal of the battle? We succeeded to defend ourselves, and then we regain our Sinai. Then who is the
And that actually, that is the reason why the October 1973 war changed everything and lead to a global balance of power in the region.
and changed
Egypt
even the
became
tactics.
the regional power.
Even the tactics.
Yes.
Nobody
tactics as
believes.
well.
I can speak in the Air Force widely, but in the ground forces, this soldier with the to face a tank, a heavy tank, and it was a very surprise for them.
Yes.
Because normally a tank will face a tank, but to some soldier digging in the ground and wait for a tank and attack the tank with the RPG, or they call it RPG, it was a big victory. It changed to cross the Suez Canal and to destroy Barleaf lines or defense lines. It's
Especially after all the myth around the Barleaf line. That
all the
stories that
the stories and then I remember that in one of the recording of the Israelis Barleaf areas, they are attacking us like Chinese. There are so many, and those people, they come from everywhere in Egypt.
Yes.
We have a 1 million under arm, 1 million to prepare for this.
Of course.
And to last the battle from 6 October till the 28th. Israel cannot stand this.
But Egypt can.
Egypt can. And you know that we are, for now and forever, as Prophet Muhammad said, we will continue to be
the best soldiers
the
on
best
earth.
soldiers all over
خير
there.
أجناد الأرض. Thank you very much, General Magdiddin Rifat. A great honor talking to you.
It's my honor.
Always pleased to hear the stories of 1973 war. I take personal pride when I talk to one of the veterans of the war. I'd like to thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be right back.
we are back, ladies and gentlemen, meeting a regular visitor to the Air Force Museum, Dr. Dia Helmi. Dr. Helmi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Helmi, first of all, before we start talking about your impression of the museum, what did you like most, can you tell us your own experience living through the actual 1973 war on October 6th? How was it like as an Egyptian citizen going through the motions of it, the news of it, the updates? How was it like experiencing the 1973 October 6th victory?
Really, at that time, I remember that I was 15 years old, and as most of my colleagues and friends at that time, all of us is talking about really the war, what we are going to do. Everybody is expecting that we are going to back again to this area, you know, just to have our land. At that time in the schools, in the universities, I remember, everybody is talking in this language, the same language. I'm very proud at that time when we go for 6 October 1973, and I remember that some people don't believe.
Yes.
Especially in the first minute, especially as everybody know, we have, you know, surprise our enemy, and we go at 2 o'clock afternoon. When we receive the news, everybody is
What time
proud.
did you receive the news? We know it started off at 2:05.
yes.
When did you know about the actual success of the operation?
I remember, it's a long time, but I remember that it was the same evening, not exactly 2 or 3
Yes.
o'clock. At the same evening, everybody in the street, in the clubs, in the, you know, our neighbors, we already in the war. Really? Really? Nobody is believe, you know, because we wait for a long time.
Yes.
We wait the same minute that we go, and we did not go just for a war, no. But you know, the Suez Canal is
Yes.
a big problem to go there, and when we see the late evening, maybe in the night or next day, but nobody's go to sleep at that time. I remember my family, my mother. At that time, but I have to mention for something, my father was fighting there
Oh.
in 1973. Yeah, I know that this is surprising you, but this is the fact. So we have, you know, feelings not like anybody, because we have the father there,
Yes.
but we are happy and we are proud. We would like to make sure that he is safe and our army forces is safe and everybody is okay and all things is going in the same way. Gradually, we follow all what the Egyptian TV put, the radio, everybody. And I remember that the Arab world, the
Yes.
whole Arab world was very proud with this action, with this war. And you know what happened after that, that we are very happy that we have the victory at that time, and you know the news comes and comes.
Yes, and was it? How did you find out whether your father was safe or not? How did he? What was his state during that
Yes.
war? How did you find
This
out
is a
the
good
news
question,
about
really.
it?
Yeah, this is a good question. I remember my mother at that time crying, but the first you know news about my father after 3 months.
So you had to wait for 3 months, not knowing how your father was doing in the war.
Exactly, exactly. For 3 months, it's a very long time for
Yes,
us at that
definitely.
time. Not only 3 months. He was a fighter, a pilot, and nothing to do. We have nothing to do. Just wait.
Yes,
And he cannot contact us at that time.
of course.
You know, this story, I give it to my son and my daughter. They are big now.
Yeah.
And sometimes we tell our granddaughter, I have only one granddaughter, about her grandfather. And we are talking, you know, about these days with really, really high proud that we do that. And one of our family joined this victory.
Yes.
But you know, everybody normally will feel worry, but we have the same worry about Egypt, about
Yes,
our country, about
definitely.
everybody. Because at that time, I would like to tell you something, to add something, that everybody is like a team.
Yes. Everyone's united.
Yeah, exactly. And with something, you know, nobody arrange it, you know. Just do it. Just they do like that, you know.
Yes.
At that time, you can leave your home opened, but nobody will take anything. Everybody feels that we are a family, and we should be strong against our enemy.
Yes.
And when we see, I can tell you, I remember now, just now, 1 or 2 months after that, some you know, our soldiers, some people in the street, the people hug them and, you know, kissing
Yes.
them. Yeah, welcome
Definitely.
back, something like that.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for people to be united, there had to be a strong, unanimous decision, a bold decision to get into the war. And that decision was taken in the main operations room where all the heads of the military leaders were gathering. They drew up plans for the attack. They drew up the plan for the actual war. Let's check out this report regarding the operations room, and we'll be right back.
This is the operations room of 1973 war, especially for 14th of October, which consisted of some officers of the Egyptian Air Force and some officers of the Egyptian Air Defense. And from the general situation, they decided who will take the airstrike, the Air Force or the Air Defense, or both of them. Also, there is 2 radar workers.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our conversation with the regular guest for the Air Force Museum, Dr. Diya Helmi. Dr. Helmi, now you came here many times before, and what brings you here back again and again and again? What do you like most about this museum? What attracts you the most?
Really, I came here 5 times. This is the 5th one. Maybe the first one like 3 years ago, and at that time I remember that I'm too late. When I see everything here, I feel, you know, I feel happy, and I would like to register everything. I have many photos everywhere. I asked the people here, it's allowed to have some photos, something like that first. And when they said it's allowed, I was very happy because I have these photos and send it to everybody. You know, maybe this will surprise you, but a lot of people, even in Cairo, don't know that we have something like this. That's why I'm from here asking everybody, every family, to have their kids and, you know, their wives, their fathers, and came here to see what happened through 90 years, a very long time, and the oldest air force in the, you know, in the area, in Africa, in the Middle East, is the Egyptian Air Force. And you asked me why I came many times. Because in one time you cannot collect all the information you'd like to know, especially inside there is a lot of things. And one time, like today, I bring my granddaughter and she's drawing now upstairs, and she's very happy. She's 6 years old, but really she's very happy. And when I asked her, you are going to share your photos here with your friends in school tomorrow? She said, yes, and I would like to back again. She buy two small pilot, you
Yes.
know, something like that as a souvenir, but
Yes.
she's very happy. And that's why I would like to, you know, it's a very good as entertainment to have you. That's good. But the most important thing is we are very loyal to our country. We are very loyal to those people who paid their life to keep Egypt, to
Yes.
keep our life. And would like to tell them a message. We are here for you also. You know, I have like 20 photo only for the photos in the, you know, in the wall, because everybody has a story, and all of these stories is really something we have to proud rest of our life.
Yes. Dr. Helmi, now you came here 5 times. You got your granddaughter here now. But what would you say is the most interesting part of this museum that you like? The main attraction for yourself? Which part of the museum do you like the most?
Really, you know, the news about the history of the army forces, the Egyptian army forces, our army forces. These really, you know, I feel great when I see this news and read the stories. Sometimes a story about war, like Mansoura. War. It's very important, and I would like to read the story, and I'd like to feel the people, you know, who do that before.
Yes.
It's a great stories, and we should remember that. And I would like to talk to the authorities, maybe through you, to make this in books.
Yes.
And to distribute it everywhere, because every Egyptian, all the Egyptian should know about this, you know, museum.
Yes, definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, this museum is not just for entertainment. It is very entertaining and amusing to be here, but also, as Dr. Helmi mentioned, it's about the knowledge, knowing exactly what the Egyptians went through to win the 1973 war, know more about the heritage and the culture of our country. Dr. Helmi, thank you very much for joining us on this show.
You're most welcome. I'm really happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, now let's check out some information, detailed information about the uniforms of the Air Force. The uniforms for the pilots, the officers, the soldiers, the crew. Every single uniform has a meaning, has different details, certain specifications for it. Let's check out this report. We'll be right back.
This is the uniform of the Egyptian Air Force. The first 3 are for students. This is the first one in 1932, the second one, and this is till 2007. This is the first uniform for officers, 1932, the summer and the winter. All of those are the upgrade for the uniform till now. This is now the summer uniform, and this is the winter uniform. The last 3 are for the commander of the Egyptian Air Force. Now for officers, the summer and winter, this is nowadays. And the last 3 for the commanders of the Egyptian Air Force. This is the aviation uniform for pilots. This is from 1931 till 1967, and this is from 1968 till date.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us two young gentlemen who work here as tour guides. We have with us Talal Tariq and Mahmoud Gouda. Talal Tariq graduated from the Faculty of Engineering, and Mahmoud Gouda graduated from Faculty of Elson, and they work here as tour guides. I'd like to welcome both of you, gentlemen. I would start with you, Talal. Now, I have a question for you. Coming here to this very beautiful place, the museum. How can a family, parents, kids spend quality time here at the Air Force Museum?
To be honest, as soon as you come in the museum, they get to experience, they see the venue we have here of the aircrafts. They get to experience the history and the culture. From the kids in general have to, like, they see it firsthand. This is just the outside venue. And then they go into the museum and they get to experience much more with activities that we provide. So the main aim of all of this is to relay the information to the kids and to the family members that whether it was through the aircraft engineering or whether it's through the actual history that they're learning,
Yes.
it's a cooperation between both of them,
Okay.
between us and the families and the kids, and we try to make them feel at ease, like it's their home.
Yes. And Mahmoud, how can the exhibitions here help visitors thoroughly engage with October Victory? What are the exhibits? How can we go through the October War? How can we capture the spirit of the October War? Because here we have real aircrafts that took part actually in the October War. So how can we do that?
I think we tell the untold part of the war. Here we tell them the history of the aviation and the real aircraft that participated in the war, in the first air strike, for example. When I tell them this is the actual flight or the actual flight that used by the ex-president or one of the martyrs, this is the actual real flights. We do what I call the untold part of the war. That's the importance of this place.
Yes. And yes, Talal, we have here real airplanes and fighter jets like the ones we have here in the that actually that's really interesting to watch. Inside also there is a flight-like model that the visitors can actually ride and enjoy the trip. They can go inside the aircraft. Tell us more.
Well, first of all, it's the MI6. The MI6 is an activity that we have, and it's also the other activity is the TU. The TU is a simulation one where you're riding into the actual plane, and we have like a simulation of the ocean or the land or whatever is on the screen.
Yes.
That's one of the activities that is there, and that's exactly the plane right next to us.
Yes.
The other activities include the workshop, where we deal with kids mostly in general. We help them understand the aerodynamics or the basics of a plane or an aircraft, and we tend to show them the history through a puppet show. So we deal with kids more or less because we like to. The main aim of the museum is not just to show you our history.
Yes.
It's to show children and to get them excited about learning about this.
About visiting the museum.
Exactly. Not just about understanding our history and wanting to learn more.
Okay.
That's basically me.
And Mahmoud, who is your audience? Who comes here to visit the museum more oftenly? And how do you suit your programs according to your audience?
I believe to say it's not just the kids or it's for the whole family. But okay, maybe in one place or more we focus on the kids, we try to teach them something. But when I come to talk about the history of the aviation or the history of the aircrafts, I mean the parents interested more in this. But we focus on the kids, of course, more, but we suit our program for both. Okay, for example, if I have the amount of kids, if a very big amount of kids, I try to teach them how the aviation started. I try to give them a new way to study aviation, to know about the aircrafts, to know more about the history of this place.
Yes. And Talal, as we stand here, we have right behind you the main hall of the museum.
Yes, indeed.
And films, 3D films are displayed inside this hall. Tell us more about it.
Essentially, we show the screen in the Glory Hall. The Glory Hall has a big venue where it shows the past leaders and current leaders of the Air Force. The 3D movie is basically just a short film showing the missions that were taken in the October War, 1973, and it shows what the simulation is a mixture of the simulation and real shots. But it gives an idea of the things that
So they
people
get
don't
to
know.
feel that like they are inside the war. They are
see,
interactive.
yes, they see what's happening because
Yes.
we at that time I don't think they had a real life like
Yes.
images.
Yes.
But this is a simulation showing exactly what was happening in the war.
Yes.
So that's when I didn't see it the first time I didn't know.
So
about
what's the feedback you get after they watch the 3D movies?
It's not more about the feedback, but they
actually
want to know more.
excited, yes.
They're excited. As soon as they're up in the workshop, they want to know more about the planes. They ask a lot of questions about the planes. What about this? And we tend to have like a response with them where we have a game and we ask them questions so we could have an incentive for them to actually pay attention and learn more about their history.
That's really interesting. I'd like to thank you very much
problem.
both,
It's our pleasure.
Talal
It's our
Tariq
pleasure.
and Mahmoud
It's our
Gouda.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
نشيد بقوله كل يوم ونادي باسمك انتي والعالم قصادي يا عمري كله يشهد بميلادي فداكي حياتي يا حب عايش وجيل من بعدك تحيا مصر كلمة قالها كل مصري في انتصاره تحيا مصر وكل جندي عاشها ليل ونهاره هتناديني هتلاقيني تحت أمرك عمري مش هيسوى حاجة جنب عمرك انتي أغلى حاجة عندي حب واصل منتهاه قولنا نتحدى أي صعب للنهاية أخلصنا في العمل وفي النوايا ودي القرار دي أول البداية ولادك شبابك عايشين وعندك الحلم الجديد تحيا مصر كلمة قالها كل مصري في انتصاره تحيا مصر وكل جندي عاشها ليل ونهاره هتناديني هتلاقيني تحت أمرك عمري مش هيسوى حاجة جنب عمرك انتي أغلى حاجة عندي حب واصل تعالوا وشوفوا هدية مصر للعالم بحاله لو رايح ولا جاي سهلنا له بالوقت والمسافة حسبناها له بنفتح مكانه فيجيب أفضل مطير Our presence to the world is saving time, reducing distance. We're the sons of the pharaohs and we're proud to be Egyptians. It's a matter of the peace and the miracles and Egypt.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Well, everybody knows that the Egyptian army is the biggest and the strongest army in North Africa and the whole of the African continent, but that wasn't always the case. Actually, there were no soldiers during the Pharaoh times, prehistoric era. Egyptians were mainly farmers. They didn't need any organized army to defend themselves because they were actually defended by the natural borders of the country, which was mainly the desert. So if the Pharaoh actually wanted to go to war or people to defend their country, he would ask the farmers and not actually have any soldiers.
Indeed, Hani, but that wasn't the case. Eventually, as the Hyksos people located near northern Egypt became more organized and they conquered Lower Egypt using chariots and advanced weapons, the Egyptians knew that that was the time that they needed an army. They learned how to make powerful chariots and gathered a strong army with infantry, archers, and charioteers. They eventually took Lower Egypt back from the Hyksos. And in the upcoming feature, we will learn more about the history of the army in ancient Egypt.
The Egyptian army is the most ancient army known to mankind. The army was the first formed after ancient Egyptian pharaoh of the first dynasty, King Narmer, unified Egypt in the year 3200 BC. Dozens of centuries later, the modern Egyptian army was established during the rule of Muhammad Ali Pasha, who is considered to be the founder of modern Egypt. Muhammad Ali formed an army of purely Egyptian soldiers for the very first time after a long period during which the Egyptian army was a monopoly of non-Egyptians, especially the Mamluks. Egypt is forever preserved by men who know no fear. Men who do not accept defeat and who refuse to surrender. Egypt is protected by men who pledged to defend their homeland against domestic enemies and foreign foes. The men of the Egyptian armed forces all stand united under one heart, one soul, and one goal.
And as we are celebrating the 46th anniversary of the 6th of October 1973 war, now we are located in the Air Force Museum in Cairo. We met a regular visitor, Dr. Bassem al-Shamma, who is the very famous Egyptologist and historian, and no one better to actually talk about and brief us on the recent and the ancient history of the Egyptian army. Dr. Shamma, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me in this amazingly beautiful place.
Yes, it is definitely. Dr. Shamma, this is the Air Force Museum, but we want to take a few steps back. We want to talk about the Egyptian army in general. Shed more light on the ancient Egyptian army. We know it was very famous. We know it was famous for its victories, for how big it was. But can you give us more of a detailed insight on it?
Like the ancient Egyptian civilization,
yes.
And like any of the beautiful inventions that we always study, done by the hands of those amazing Egyptians, the army and the disciplined soldier who would join or be recruited as the first recruiting system which was followed in ancient Egypt. There was a title in the ancient Egyptian army called the scribe soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And the scribe soldier would go to the villages and to the beautiful cities of Egypt, and he would choose and write the names because he is the scribe.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be considered recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
And you would be very lucky if you are a young Egyptian or a young ancient Egyptian to be recruited in the ancient Egyptian army because of many reasons. One, because of the disciplined life. Two, because you will be also given a beautiful piece of land by the government. We all know that the ancient Egyptian invented the idea of the centralized government with viziers,
Yes.
meaning ministers today. And there will be this business of you are going to be defending your land and your land at the same time,
Yes.
because you were given a piece of land to be of your own. The very famous Egyptologist Shulman has studied more than 60 ranks in the ancient Egyptian army, which gives you an idea how disciplined, how the administration of the army was, how the division of the army into platoons. We know from Ramesses II in his famous battle of Qadesh against the Hittites in Syria, how his platoons were given names. And the platoons were given names in form of deities. So you hear about Ptah, you hear about Ra, you hear about Iman, we call him Amun
Yes.
today. And you will notice that those were the names of the platoons, and how small groups will be diverging from those platoons for certain functions and certain missions. Some of which in the Egyptian army history was very close to Mission Impossible. Like, for example, the battle that I considered the twin battle of the 6th of October, 10th of Ramadan battle, as I always call it, the twin battle, the Battle of Megiddo. To those who know Megiddo, they will know what I'm talking about. To those who do not know Megiddo or did not read about it, they will be very amazed to know that the ancient Egyptian army was to defeat an army in Asia in the famous place of Megiddo, a very tough place to deal with. I'm talking from the geological point of view and from the military point of view. Why? Because the Egyptian army was facing 330, that's documented in ancient Egypt, 330 emirs, 330 princes, who every one of which is bringing his own group of soldiers in a, if you'd like, a confederation, a unified army led by the Prince of Qadesh. So imagine with me, and all our viewers will imagine with me, the Prince of Qadesh, who his name and his title on his own is a very strong title, leading 330 emirs, 330 princes, every one of which is bringing his own group of soldiers.
Groups, yes. Well, Dr. Shamma, now you've said that there were 60 ranks many different organizations and many different platoons within the army. How did the Egyptian army get to that sort of organization? Because it does sound pretty advanced to that time. So how did we actually get advanced to reach that level of organization and strategic planning, if we may call it? At the same time, it was pretty ancient. I mean, we're talking about prehistoric times. So how did we get that? Were we influenced by other cultures, other militaries from other countries, other empires?
Well said. This is a very interesting question, because you will notice when you read history, and especially the prehistoric history or the before the dynastic era, if you like, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, you will notice, for example, that the very famous incident of unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, that was a military leader who led an army from the south to defeat the north, and then he depicts the captives of wars who looked very, very away from the Egyptian features. The facial features were very non-Egyptian.
Yes.
So we thought maybe they were foreigners who were living in the Delta. This is a proposition in history. So we are talking about a battle, strategic planning that you mentioned. 3,200 years BC,
yes.
Over 5,000 years of history. There is a group of soldiers led by a leader, a military leader, who then became the king of Upper and Lower Egypt for the first time, wearing the double crown, as we all know, the red and the white. But even more interesting, you will notice that battles took place even before the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. The Upper and Lower Egyptian unification did not happen overnight. It was not like Narmer would come and wake up, let's go, let's conquer the north, unified, done. It was not like that, of course. In history, we have many things in form of steps. You will notice before that, the world were in tribal wars, and after that as well. But in Egypt, it was, as you said, very, very advanced way of military tactics, to the point that everybody will be amazed to tell you that there is a battle, once again, the Megiddo battle, was used by the enemies 3,400 years after it was achieved. The great victory of Juhitmes III, called Thutmoses III, with his amazing disciplined Egyptian army. And here comes, after 3,400 years, Allenby of the enemy, called Elimbi in our colloquialism. Allenby used it against the Turks in 1918. 1918.
Yes.
1918 AD is using a plan which took place, we're talking Thutmoses III, 1400s BC, almost over 3,000 years of history.
Yes.
That gives you what? That gives you not only military tactic, but it is still visible, it's still done, it is still used by people, it's still studied by people. So military action took place thousands of years ago, and it is followed by people afterwards. Bear in mind, 1918, what kind of weaponry you are using, and 34 or more hundred years of age, what sorts of military tactics.
Well, talking about weaponry, was the Egyptian army at that time, during the pharaonic era, was it known for having a certain a specialization or a stronger sort of weaponry? Were they stronger, the horsemen, the carriages, were they the foot soldiers, the soldiers on the ground, were they the biggest sort of threat? How was it assessed?
Without exaggeration, I can tell you easily that the Egyptian army, when it was in the ancient Egyptian army, when it was faced by foreign unknown weaponry, if it was in the form, in one case, of the horse, as you well mentioned, in the case of the Hika Khasut, that we call them Hyksos, those people who came as Indo-European tribes, the Indo-European tribes were, what is this animal that runs so fast?
Yes.
To the Egyptians, they didn't know the horse. To the Egyptians, they didn't know the wheel. So the chariot wheel and the horse, entered by the Hyksos, were very equal to today's nuclear weapons. This is no exaggeration. And the Hyksos were tough people.
Yes.
Those are people who ruled northern Egypt for 108 years. We are not talking about a tribe with no administrative way of life, living in caves. We're looking at people who ruled a very strong kingdom, the Egyptian kingdom, for all those years, which means they were strong. So to get rid of them using the same weaponry, I think that's genius, because what happened is that the ancient Egyptian soldier, as he did in the 6th of October, again, once again, this twin thing that's happening in history repeats itself positively.
Yes.
In our case here, they studied the chariot of the Hekakasut, of the Hyksos, and they captured and they lightened it, so they made
Would
it
be
lighter
faster.
in weight, so it became faster. Because in ancient times like today, fast equals victory.
Yes.
Your speed is a huge percentage of your victory. Again, once again, the
Yes.
tricky way of dealing with the battle. So now you have the weapons, now you have tamed the horse, now you are having a faster and a lighter chariot than the enemy. That led to the attempts. You asked, how did we reach? Of course, you didn't reach an overnight. That was training, that was studying the enemy, studying its weaponry, advancing yourself.
Yes.
There were a great deal of martyrs involved also in the battles. We have Siqnin Rata'a, the king of Egypt. He lost his life during one of the battles against the Hyksos, to the point that when I was going through an English written book about Egyptology, I read this amazing description of this non-Egyptian Egyptologist or historian writing a book about Egypt, calling Siqnin Rata'a, and this amazing Egyptian king who lost his life in one of the battles against the enemy, the martyr. And I was amazed.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Shamma mentioned, talking about speed, talking about specialized weaponry, that means victory, we are sitting right here, right now in the Air Force Museum, where actually in the museum you have a great wall inside that actually depicts the history of the Air Force in the Egyptian Army. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Here, as you can see, we have the wall that tells the history of the aviation. It was proven that the ancient Egyptians were the first one to know the science of aviation when they found out a modern model of a pad dated in a tomb dated back to 200 years before Christ. After that, we have the first European attempt to fly were done by Abbas ibn Farnaz, the Andalusian scientist. In 1500, they found out the portrayals that were drawn by Leonardo da Vinci for a fluttering wings. After that, we have famous Wright brothers who actually made the first fly in 1903. In 1909, the French Louis Blériot was the first human being to fly over the Manche, English Canal. 1915, the first German plane actually made of metal, which participated in the First World War. 1927, the Lockheed Vega, the American plane, made the first Atlantic flight. After that, in 1939, was the first plane with a jet engine called Heinkel. It was a German.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, talking to the regular visitor to the Air Force Museum, our very own Dr. Bassem Shamma, the famous Egyptologist and historian. Dr. Shamma, now let's go fast forward for a bit, leaving the Pharaonic era. Now we want to take an overview of the development and the progression of the Egyptian army up until the 1973 war. So, was the Egyptian army always the biggest in North Africa, the biggest in Africa, the strongest? How was it like during these phases of the French occupation here, the English occupation, leading up to the 1967 war, leading up to the 1973 war? What was the progression of the Egyptian army looking like during these times?
You have to bear in mind when we go through an assessment of the Egyptian army through its phases of history, you have also to bear in mind a very important factor, which is weaponry. You mentioned weaponry in the first part.
Yes.
And you mentioned, is this a factor? What if a soldier is attacking me with an iron sword? And your swords are made out of copper, for example, or you are still using wooden arrows or the sword. Is this going to be in my favor? So all through the history, Egyptian soldiers are progressing. You can see it. You can see how bronze, when it was introduced, that's a revolution.
Yes.
In the history of weaponry, iron, the same thing. You are fighting the Hittites. Hittites comes from the area that you would like to call nowadays northern Syria, Anatolia, places like that. This is a very advanced weaponry place.
Yes.
How to learn more, how to educate yourself, that's what the Egyptian soldier did through his phases. And in many cases, we keep a guy like me who's writing and reading history for the last 38 years, if you like. I'm still amazed at battles like, for example, the military council, which Thutmose III gathered. Military council, over 3,000 years of history. When you think like the king is going to give his decision and that's it, no. The leaders are with him, the leaders of the platoons are with him, and documented what the king himself is telling us, how he proposed an amazing idea. And for the people who know Megiddo, it's a very tough geological area. To reach, you have two ways. One unpaved, and no way a military army can go through. No way, because of its bumps and ups and downs. No way. It's impossible. And the other one is the paved road, or the path, which the Megiddo people are expecting you to come from. So while the leaders propose this, here comes Sadat, but over 3,000 years of history, and gives this decision that the people will say, this is a decision.
It's quite a bold one.
Exactly, quite bold one. Well said. And are you taking the responsibility for that? Yes, I am sure of my soldier. I'm sure of my abilities of my soldiers and my army. And he said, we are going to take the unpaved road. And that will surprise the army. Unpaved road means your army can reach half of it, can reach to Megiddo quarter of the number, and the rest will be if dead or if injured or if. Or the chariots, if you like, something would happen to the chariots, will be broken, will be. And he did, and it worked, and it surprised the Megiddo people to the point that the history texts are telling us that they were throwing themselves from the Megiddo walls. They would prefer to commit suicide, the enemy soldiers, than to face the Egyptian soldier.
Well, talking about the surprise element, now we're celebrating 46 years for the 1973 war. It is a well-documented fact the surprise element was a big factor in winning this war. And it started off with the Air Force making the first wave of attack. Now, that changed the science of warfare in modern history. And many things and many military strategies and planning was influenced by such an attack and such a maneuver by the Egyptian military, especially the Air Force. How did that come about? What was so different that was influential about the Air Force and its attack to influence the other Western military and the international military strategies?
I learned a sentence from a gentleman authority in our beautiful museum here. And I'm going to quote it, answering your question. It is the human element. Because if you look at the weapons in 1973 and who was with the other side, and you would think, well, that can give maybe a favor on the other side. And then you look at how the great defeat that the enemy met, especially with the surprise of the first airstrike and the Air Force airstrike. And if you look at the 14th of October Air Battle, the Air Force Battle, which became later on the festival and the feast of the Air Force in our military. One of the most amazing air fights in Mansoura. Again, once again, the human element worked in our favor. This will remind you, going back to your question about how the Egyptian army all through its history went in stages. For example, take Ain Galut, which is not far away from Megiddo, but far away in time, not far away in distance, if you like, in Asia. And you will notice how at the beginning, when the army led by Qutuz, as you all remember, and before Qutuz, Bibers was sent to see what's happening with the Tatarians, with the Mongols, and all of a sudden, the shaking at the beginning, and then the scream of Qutuz, wa Islama, wa Islama, wa Islama, 3 times, and the famous scream, and that changed a very huge scream coming from the heart of the leader of the army, wanting to win the battle, leading the Egyptian army once again outside to protect not only Egypt, by the way, because I say Ain Galut battle, just like the 6th of October, unlike Megiddo, unlike Qadisiyah, and like all the other amazing victories that was led by Islamic or Egyptian army, you will notice something very interesting. You will notice that it is not only changing the history of military, but it's also changing geography, amazingly enough. Fathom the idea that the Mongols went on, or the Tatarians went on after Ain Galut. They would go directly to Europe, and Europe has got to pay homage and thanks to the Egyptian army for that.
Dr. Shamma, because we're running out of time, one final question. Being a regular visitor in the Air Force Museum, how do you find it? How do you rate it? You've been to museums all around the world. How do you rate this museum that you visit so much?
I love this museum. I came more than once. I think museology is very, very obvious in the inside and the outside. The science of not only that you are visiting the museum to see things or to learn things, but also to share, also to do the activities. Experience it. Children will be very happy. Every age will be very happy. I am so proud of this place to the point that when I'm talking about it, because I'm well known that if I see a small bit in this museum or that museum, I always criticize, and you all know this about me.
Definitely.
This is a place which is action, it is interesting, it is learning, it is museology, it is clean, and the guides are amateur guide. The guides are amazingly educated, very excited, very interesting, and that also turns to the people who are attending. I say to everybody, please do come and visit it, not only once and more. Schools, bring your students here, universities, everybody must visit this museum.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, definitely it is a privilege to be shooting and being here at the Air Force Museum, and it's also a pleasure to have with us Dr. Bassem Shamma, the famous historian and Egyptologist. Dr. Shamma, it was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be right back for more on this special edition celebrating the 46th anniversary of the 1973 October War victory.
يا مصر يا مصر
شافش الأمل في عيون الولاد وصبايا البلد ولا شاف العمل سهران في البلاد والعزم اتولد ما شافش الأمل في عيون الولاد وصبايا البلد ولا شاف العمل سهران في البلاد والعزم اتولد ولا شاف النيل في أحضان الشجر ولا سمع مواويل في ليالي القمر ولا شاف النيل في أحضان الشجر ولا سمع مواويل في ليالي القمر أصله ما عداش على مصر أصله ما عداش على مصر يا حبيبتي يا مصر يا مصر يا حبيبتي يا مصر يا مصر يا حبيبتي يا مصر يا
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're also joined by Miss Irini Neder, the tour guide here at the Air Force Museum. Miss Neder, thank you very much for joining us.
You're so welcome.
Miss Neder, now first off, can you give us an overview of the museum, the idea behind it? How long does it take to actually tour the museum, the main attractions of it?
Okay, so first of all, always we say here that the museum is like a window. Through it, we want to let the generation know what the Egyptian Air Force is and the armed forces also. So here the museum divided into two parts, the outdoor display and the inner section of the museum. The outdoor display where we're going to talk about those aircraft and the war which participated in since 1932 till today. Inside the museum, we're going to talk about the aviation science, how establishing the Egyptian Air Force and so on. So it takes normally 1 hour, the tour, the normal tour.
Yes. Well, what about, I mean, there's, walking in here, we saw kids' parks, and it seems that there's a lot for not just like adults, but also for the kids, different kinds of entertainment. And you've told me before that there's an interesting puppet show being held inside, movies as well being shown inside. Can you tell us more about this?
Okay, actually we thought here that when I told a kid that the MiG-21 just defeated the F-4, he just looked at me and said, "What are you saying?" He just don't get me. So we want to capture all the categories, not just the adults. That's why we're doing a puppet show, like you say. We tell them all the information about the outdoor display and the intersection, but in their way, a really simple way that they enjoyed, and at the same time they take the information. And we're doing also workshop. They're doing handcraft with the aircrafts and by their hands, and also we're doing a recycling for the aircraft using a really simple stuff that exists in every single home. So that's why we want to just not just saying an information, that's it. We just want to build a human character or a kid character.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a very environmental one,
Yeah,
if I may
exactly.
add. Well, what about the main attraction do you feel is for the museum? What do the people are always like in awe of when they first see it?
I guess the aircrafts. I guess the aircraft, and especially because this is a genuine aircraft. So the main question everybody just asks, is this real? So yes, it's real. And the main attraction thing that all this aircraft that participated in the war in 1973 war of attrition and so on. So I guess this is the most important thing we have here in the museum.
And do you feel that the visitors, after they come and they check out everything and they experience these workshops, the shows, do you feel that they have much more of a knowledge of their own heritage, of their own history, of their own story?
Of course, I guess so, because especially the new generation, when they come here, they don't even know about 1973 war. So, and that's very bad thing. So when they come here, they just know the information, all the story. So they feel more proud of Egypt or being Egyptians.
Yes. And would you say that most of the visitors here are youngsters, are youth, or are they adults? Are they mostly Egyptians? Are they foreigners? What
No.
would you say are the main segments of visitors?
Actually, here we accept all the categories, all the ages, all the nationalities. I can't say a specific number or percentage of kids or adults because we accept or we welcome all those categories. So yes.
Well, you're an experienced tour guide. Now, first off, as soon as you came here and you started being a tour guide at the Air Force Museum, what was the first thing that caught your eye? What was the first thing that you were like, wow, I did not know about that?
Here about the museum?
Yeah.
To the aircrafts, seriously, and especially the wreckage.
Okay.
Inside, because I see a real wreckage from a battle we have been through, and the story behind this battle that Egypt now, this battle, Mansoura battle, that everybody studied outside because this is the longest air battle. So it's so cool that you see that Egypt have this huge history and this huge heroes.
Well, do you see any sort of war veterans who actually come here to the Air Force?
Yes, always.
How is it like affecting them emotionally, psychologically, going through the motions, the memories, looking at all these aircrafts and the wreckage, as you mentioned? How is it like? How's the impact like?
Actually, it's so funny, especially when they come here and they see aircrafts like the Gumhuriya, the first aircraft they trained on. They say like, "Oh, this is my baby." So it's so funny, yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely there are a lot of things to see here, a lot of shows, a lot of workshops, a lot of crafts that the kids need to learn, a lot of information the adults should know. And I'd like to thank our very own Miss Irini Neder. Miss Neder, thank you very much for joining us.
You're so welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We have more coming up in tonight's episode.
يا مصر
وانا على الربابة بغني وبغني غنوة الحرية والنايا
تحيا مصر
وتحيا مصر تحيا مصر.
Dear viewers, it was such a pleasure celebrating with you the victory of the 6th of October 1973. Today we came here to the Air Force Museum to celebrate this very special occasion, the occasion that is very special to our hearts as Egyptians, the occasion that we continue to remember every year.
Yes, definitely, Hela. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not just a celebration of the October War victory. We're also remembering the lives of the soldiers, the martyrs who sacrificed everything for their dear country. We also remember all the mothers, all the brothers, all the sisters who lost their loved ones in such a war and such an important victory, and use this as a motive and an influence to push ourselves, to push our country forward.
A salute to everyone who sacrifices his soul for the sake of his country, for the sake of our beloved Egypt. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in this very special edition, coming to you from the Air Force Museum, the very special place that actually is worth visiting. And today we held several interviews, including interviews with war veterans and also the tour guides here in the museum, and we brought to you features and reports, so we hope you've enjoyed it. Special edition brought to you by my colleague Hani Saif and myself, Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you very much, Hani.
Thank you very much, Hela. It was a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more editions, more special shows and more celebrations here on Nile TV International. Thank you for joining us.